Good evening and welcome to a talk that will be given by Dr. Scott Poland. I'd like to welcome everyone who is in the Highland Park High School cafeteria as well as those who are joining us online. Dr. Poland greeted our faculty and staff this morning on our first day back for faculty and staff before we start school on Wednesday. He is a professor at the College of Psychology and the director of the Suicide and Violence Prevention Office for NSU Florida in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He is a licensed psychologist and an internationally recognized expert on school safety, youth suicide, and school crisis prevention and intervention. He has authored or co-authored 6 books and many chapters and articles on these subjects. He previously directed psychological services for Cypress Fairbanks School District in Texas for 24 years and is a past president of the National Association of School Psychologists. He is very dedicated to prevention and has testified about school violence and youth suicide before the U.S. Congress on 4 occasions. Dr. Poland has responded to help schools after natural disasters, acts of terrorism, school shootings, and youth suicide clusters. He has provided many presentations about mental health and coping since the start of the pandemic and has reached an audience of more than 100,000 school staff members or parents. He is known for his dynamic and practical presentations. He has received many awards, including being named the most outstanding psychologist in Texas. Dr. Poland has also received the Houston Wage Peace Award, the Parkland Helping the Community Heal Award, and the APA Division 16 Distinguished Service Award. Dr. Poland, it's my pleasure to welcome you to District 113 to meet the parents.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it is my pleasure to have a chance with you, to talk with you tonight. I hope to say some things that will be meaningful and helpful. It's a challenging world right now. We could spend a lot of time focusing on all the issues around the world, whether we want to talk about the pandemic that's killed more than 1 million Americans, racial tension, global warming, political polarization, or the problem of mass shootings in our country. I've been extraordinarily pleased with every interaction I've had with Highland Park staff. I believe that as a district that truly cares, they opened their school doors immediately. And the mental health response from the community and the thousands of counseling sessions that have been provided to community members is truly extraordinary. In fact, in working in this field for 40+ years, I've never really seen a community provide so much service and come together all together. So my message tonight to parents, in some ways it's actually a pretty simple one. You know, I got some feedback today from staff about they appreciated that my message wasn't complex. It was just all about reaching out to children. And I still remember responding to the first school shooting in my career and telling parents something like this: be careful not to project all of your own thoughts and worries onto your child. Give them permission for a range of emotions. There's no right or wrong way to feel about this. Kids need an opportunity, if they wish, to talk about it, write about it, music, artwork, projects, ceremonies, and rituals. And in particular for high school kids, here's something that I've seen time after time. They want to make the world better. They're looking for a gift of hope. How can we start more prevention programs? How can we make sure that tragedies do not keep happening in our country? So I'm going to move through some slides tonight. And routine. Children thrive on routine. And it's very important that we get them back to school, that we have the strong message about how glad we are to have them back in school. We're welcoming them, and we are going to have a good year. And I do believe that the school start will go better than anyone could have imagined. And something that I believe strongly about educators is they got into education because they care about children. And in fact, I said this today: let your heart be your guide. In your heart, you have very good ideas about exactly what children need. Now, we recognize that some individuals are going to need more support. And there have been numerous initiatives to try to figure out who that might be. There's what's called geographic proximity. Who was at the parade? Who was exposed to the gunshots and the violence? Who lost an acquaintance or even a loved one that was killed in that tragic shooting? And then students, children, all families have other issues. There may be some kids out there right now, their beloved grandma has terminal cancer. And we need to know those things in our schools so we can reach out and provide that support. Everyone has a story to tell. And what we need to do is be there to listen to that story. So most importantly, no student feels alone about what they're going through. And then what are the typical reactions that young people have, even teenagers have, to a tragedy? They regress academically, they regress behaviorally, they have nightmares, worries, and sleeping problems. And those aren't the unusual. Almost every student will have some of those. And by the way, if I had a single thing that I think is at the bottom of high school kids and being successful, I guess it's really two things. One is getting the proper rest. And that's easy for us to say, but it's actually hard to carry out. And I want to give you an example. I spoke to high school parents in a suburb of Atlanta not long ago, and I said something to parents like this. Tell your children, it's 10:30 now, it's time to go to bed, school starts early. Hand me all of your devices. They'll all be charged and ready for you in the morning. And a mom comes up to me and she says, what if my 14-year-old daughter's friends needed to reach her in the middle of the night? They would not be able to contact her. Well, Mom, if something is so serious for your daughter's friend, I really think that she should be contacting her own parents, don't you? And I guess if you want to answer your daughter's phone at 3 a.m., that would be up to you. But you know, I did not convince that mom. She believed her daughter should be available like 24/7. Our Surgeon General produced a report that came out a few months ago. The report is entitled Protecting the Mental Health of Our Youth. Recommendations were made for parents, they were made for schools, they were made for communities, and even for students themselves. And the report said we need to seize the moment and really attend to the mental health of our young people. Sometimes when I even mention mental health, people start talking about mental illness. Mental health is basically balancing things in our lives. It's being connected in the school, our homes, the community. It's about being able to manage stress. It's about feeling productive and successful. And that's what we should all be striving for. And of course, what is really important that I say to parents is that your kids are looking to you to see how upset to be about something. And hopefully you are modeling optimism. You're modeling hope. What we do actually speaks so loudly to children that when we try to talk to them, they may not hear us. So they're watching you. And of course, what would that message actually also include for parents? If you need help, get help for you, Mom and Dad, and then you're going to be in a much better position to help your children. Okay, moving on. I've already talked about all the things there were to worry about before July 4th, and now we've added a mass shooting right here in our community. And someone said something the other day that unfortunately is probably pretty accurate. If we don't make changes in our country at some point, virtually everybody will know somebody affected by a mass shooting. And we're not going to go into all those solutions tonight, but I think it's important that all adults be active, have your voices heard. And especially let me make a few comments about school safety. Schools are the safest places children go. And one school shooting in America is unacceptable, but actually the most dangerous place for children in America is actually in our own homes. And someday we're going to have to accept that and try to do something about it. So, and really the key to making schools safe They're doing it right here, which is getting input from everybody, getting input, most importantly, from students, from staff members, the parents, and the entire community. And we're going to be talking about anxiety and depression today. The U.S. Prevention Task Force 23 years ago said every teenager seeing the doctor for any reason should be questioned about depression and thoughts of suicide. I'm very sad to tell you that suicide is the second leading cause of death for middle school through high school age students. And increasing numbers of children of color are attempting or dying by suicide, and younger children are also attempting or dying by suicide. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. In fact, let me quote our Surgeon General. We need to talk about suicide prevention more in our homes, our schools, the workplace, and our places of worship. That U.S. Prevention Task Force just released another recommendation saying every child 8 years of age and older should be examined for experiencing anxiety. So parents, we're going to talk about some of the concerning behaviors you should be looking for. Don't hesitate to turn to the school district for help for your child. So moving on, maybe, oh, there we go. Parent and child well-being. Now I know this is a high school district, but I'm going to imagine that many of you also have some children that aren't quite old enough to go to high school yet. And I'd like to share tonight a couple of personal examples. Our son was 3. He's small enough to ride in the grocery cart. I'm picking out bananas and I hear this little voice say, "Dad, am I the boy you always wanted?" Gave me a chance to enthusiastically say, "Yes, you are." Now, I have a simple thought for you, and that is, after you view this presentation, don't hesitate to let your sons and daughters know they are the children you always dreamed of. You know, I made this comment to some high school parents in Montana only a few months ago, and a dad stopped me afterwards and said, "Oh, I don't think my 17-year-old son is going to want to hear how I think he's the most wonderful kid who ever lived." And I said, "Believe me, he will. Tell him that, and send me an email and let me know how it went." Got an email the next day. He said his son was delighted. And by the way, children thrive when they have unconditional love, and also when they live in a stable home. And somehow I doubt that I'm the only person that experienced a divorce. But you know what really helped? My ex-wife is a psychologist. We made a pact. You don't talk badly about me to our children, and I won't talk badly about you. And, you know, when our youngest, she'd come to me occasionally and say some negative things about her mom, my ex-wife. Were there times I wanted to agree and add to it? Of course. But I never did, not a single time. You know what I always kept in mind? She will always be our children's mother. And she deserves my respect and certainly my financial support. And so often, kids feel in the middle every day, every way, with the disagreements between their parents. And whatever it is, parents need to work it out, and they need to realize we brought these children into this world together. We are partners forever in raising these children. So I like to ask kids, like, what do you need? And generally I hear something like this: I just need my parents and teachers to let me talk. I don't expect them to be able to solve my problems. Just let me talk. And parents, I'm going to suggest to you that you think about, when's that shared time when your kid will truly talk with you? And for our son, he loved basketball. I can still hear him dribbling 2 balls in the kitchen. And you know what Jeremy knew? Anytime, day or night, no matter how tired I was, if he said, "Dad, will you rebound?" I'd get up off the couch. I'd flip on the lights in the driveway. I'm not saying a word. I'm just passing the ball back to him. Pretty soon he's talking to me, telling me all these things I want to know about because I'm his dad. And I would respond with something really insightful based on my graduate training in psychology with my best. Wow. I'm not sure, son. That's a hard one. What are you thinking? What I've learned in 40 years of working with adolescents, they don't want an adult to say, do this, do that, you won't have a problem. They want to be listened to. They know we can't solve all the problems for them. They know that they live in a world that really none of us experienced, with all the pressure on children and all the screen time. And that gives me a chance to quote the Surgeon General's report. Here's what it said. Social media is wreaking havoc with our children's lives, making them think they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, they're not rich enough. It's interfering with sleep. It's interfering with the ability to interact in person with individuals. And I like to say simply that technology, in many ways, it's wonderful. I acknowledge that. But you need to view it in your family as it's a privilege. It's not a right. You need to pay attention. You know what I hear from moms? I understand the value of a technology-free mealtime, but it's my husband. He won't put down his phone even for 35 minutes while we eat. And it's important that in our schools and our families, we set some limits. Maybe a blackout date. Maybe a night where nobody is going to be on their technology, where we actually talk to each other. And maybe we even get out one of those old-fashioned board games. So technology is a tremendous challenge today. And then there's the quote from the kid in Montana. You know, my mom, I know she's worried about me. She cares about me. But tell her to stop texting me every 15 minutes. She has to have confidence in decisions that I'm going to make about my safety. And then this was a teenager that attended the Burke High School in Washington, D.C., where they had a shooting on April 22nd. And it's a very similar message in terms of, I need my parents to listen to me. Other kids have gone on to say something like that. When my dad answers me too quickly, it's like I know he really wasn't listening to what I had to say. So it is about listening, and it is about empathy and finding that shared time. So for our son, it was shooting baskets. For one daughter, it was riding in the car. For another one, it was like cooking in the kitchen. Just finding the time. It's relaxed, and you're not saying really much at all. And pretty soon, they will start talking to you. And I can't overemphasize this point, which is all kids, regardless of whether they're elementary, middle school, high school, they look to the significant adults in their lives to see how upset to be about something. And I learned today that surveys have been done with staff, with students, and it's very important to find out, what do you need? How can we help you? And one of the things that I always emphasize is that every student needs a go-to trusted adult at school. And surveys have found a very high percentage of the students here, around 80%, can identify that significant trusted adult. And actually, I think that's the key to preventing so many tragedies that affect young people. If somebody's talking about homicide, suicide, somebody is taking risk with drugs or cars or motorcycles, it's like their friends always know. And their friends simply need to get to an adult, and we could prevent so many of those tragedies. So we've talked about the go-to trusted adult. But you know, when the pandemic started, one of my friends was like, you got to talk about self-care for kids, school staff, parents. And I was sort of like, well, my career has been school violence. It's been school safety. It's been youth suicide prevention. But he convinced me. And now I came up with a model that I'd like to share with you. and I've had the chance to share it with thousands of people. But some people got the idea that self-care was selfish. Self-care is really about taking care of you, so you are in the best position possible to take care of your children and to take care of your family. And so what's self-care actually all about? A little more about that in a moment, but this slide is about resiliency. It's a learned behavior. It's the ability to bounce back from adversity. So what are the keys to being resilient? Surrounded by loving and caring family and friends, having problem-solving skills, always being optimistic about the future. And I'll give a couple more examples of that in just a moment. And the source for that is the American Psychological Association. So I came up with the model CALM. It is important for us to stay calm. When we're calm, we're actually helping our family, our friends, our coworkers. But then I wanted every letter to stand for something else. And that C also should stand for what can I control, which is largely my reaction to what's happened in our world. And the A. So the A stands for being alert to behavioral changes with our young people, of course, but it also stands for always being available. And the L is for listening. And we've talked about that at great length, but that L also, I think, needs to stand for limiting horrific television coverage. I know during the height of the pandemic, I couldn't watch it anymore. And you can probably conjure up images of somebody who couldn't say goodbye to their loved one and their partner of 42 years, or the portable morgues being moved onto hospital grounds. So pay attention to what your children are watching. And actually, I'm a big believer in something I just learned about today that I'm excited about. Wait until 8. I wonder if you've heard of that. So I quickly looked it up. Wait until 8 means waiting until 8th grade to get a smartphone for your child. It has to do with the pledge. It has to do with finding the other parents that have similar values, so you won't be the only parent trying to delay smartphones when every other one of your kids' friends seems to have one. But I would encourage you to investigate it, and it's very much in line with a lot of my values. I also want to call your attention to a website, commonsensemedia.org. You want to try to figure out if a program is appropriate for a particular age? Go to commonsensemedia.org, and they're going to tell you who it's appropriate for. And I'm a little concerned that it seems like some families have just kind of given up. They're just not paying attention at all to technology or what their children are exposed to. And I think it's important that we rethink some of that. And the M, modeling and management in our homes. I know it's challenging, everything going on in this world, but I always said to Jill in high school, I know you're busy, you have all these activities, but Wednesday night, we're sitting around the kitchen table. There's going to be dinner as a family. And what can we do to make the family a priority? And sometimes we just have to take a deep breath and give ourselves the message, we can get through this. I will manage this. I will seek out the positive people in my life, those that are encouraging to me, and I will be that person for others. And then we have a pretty big problem in our country in that lots of people don't want to get mental health treatment. We need to get over that stigma. So we get help for ourselves or somebody in our family when they truly need it. Now, where does our stress come from? Where does the stress come from for a high school student, for example? It comes from school, it comes from family, it comes from peers, and they all get overwhelmed at times. And one project I was working on with high schools in Colorado where kids were on virtual learning for like an entire year. And one of the groups that we conducted, the kids said something like this. I sit in front of my computer screen for like 7 hours a day, and then the teacher gives me homework on these assignments. Why can't they give me homework about self-care? And self-care, I think, needs to start in our families, with the adults engaging in self-care. It needs to start in the workplace with the boss modeling and encouraging self-care for everybody. So what exactly is it? And I'm going to go over just a couple of basic things. And I think you know these, but we need to be reminded. And it's physical part of this. Has to do with exercise and diet. So I convinced my partner, no more TV in the morning. We're going to the university gym. We're going to all walk on the treadmill for a while. And I can tell you that's a very positive way to start the day. Or if you have dogs, take them for a walk. Don't get glued to the latest news that may be disturbing. Then there's a mental side to this, and it really has to do with all of us learning a creative way to express ourselves. And that could be music, could be artwork, could be journaling, it could be gardening, it could be volunteering, it could be caring for family pets. And my partner got a little depressed during the pandemic. We actually have 20 grandchildren, and our 4 children basically said, no, you will not be seeing our grandchildren for quite a while. And I kept her busy because we were remodeling a house, and that gave her something to do virtually every single day. But then all of a sudden the house was done, and she can't see these grandchildren. And I did what a lot of people did. I bought her a puppy. And all I can say is little Taffy has done wonders. And by the way, do you have any idea what a designer little fluffy dog cost in Miami in the height of a pandemic? I mean, Bruce, I've bought cars for less money than we paid for Taffy, but she was worth every $1,000, okay? So pets, in fact, sometimes I try to think about what are the things that really worry me the most about a kid. That's when they never show remorse. That's when they're really pretty mean to like siblings. And if they're not caring for family pets, I mean, these are some very concerning behaviors that really need to be called the attention of like school counselors so those kids can get some assistance and treatment. And then Donna discovered paint by numbers. And has sat for hours. She's produced some beautiful painting. She ordered one of those for me. And I took one look at the fine motor requirements to get the paint in those squares. Not working for me. But what's the main point? We have to find out what works for us and what works for our children to really help them manage the stress in their lives. And then the other side of this, I imagine that many parents listening are very involved in a temple, in a church, or in a mosque. And I'm a very big fan of religion. It's a wonderful protective factor because it's a place where kids feel connected. But not every single one of you probably goes to a temple, a mosque, or a church every single week. There's actually another side of this that I like to refer to as just being spiritual. And being spiritual actually has a common set of values: kindness, compassion, respect for everybody. My favorite quote from Gandhi is something like this: the challenge of our society is to find both the beauty and the unity in diversity. We should all be thankful of all the diversity in our country, and we should be respectful and embracing of everyone and just always trying to figure out how can we be friendly, kind, helpful. And by the way, we have to find the humor whenever we can, and it's very important in our schools and our families. And a little bit of an unfortunate thing was that there was a period of time where we were basically told, stay indoors. But getting out in the sunshine taking a walk, riding a bicycle, going to the beach, which isn't far away. Those are actually things that really improve our outlook. Today has been a very beautiful day here in Chicago. Just having the sun out, having it not being extremely hot. Those simple things help all of us have a little bit better outlook about this world. And we need these I can statements. I can get enough sleep, and here's how I'm going to do it. And somehow I doubt that I'm the only person that sometimes wakes up at like 4:15, and I look at a clock and I start worrying about everything in this world. But we've got to figure out, how do we get a full night's sleep? How do we get that for every person in our family? Because when we're rested, we really can deal with all these ups and downs in life so much better. And I can statements about how I can relieve stress, how I can get exercise, how I can eat in a healthy manner. These are the things that parents need to model, we need to reinforce in our schools, and actually it is what self-care is all about. Now, some of you might have a kid as young as 8, so you're wondering, how could he possibly understand what I just went over? He can certainly understand drawing a picture of himself, putting in the middle, and then draw how he can help others. Draw activities that he enjoys. Draw how he can eat in a healthy manner. And draw what makes him happy. So it's really a concept that if we start it with younger children, and then we have it all the way through high school and into the workplace, we've had a very challenging couple of years. And if we're looking for something positive, maybe finally more people are understanding the importance of self-care to cope with this world. You know, I'm proud that it was shared that, yes, I did receive the Helping Parkland Heal Award. But you know what I really concentrate on the most? Just listening. And when it's appropriate, I might ask something like, what are you the most worried about? What are you facing? Then I might follow that up with, who or what has helped you when you've had to deal with something sad or tragic in your life before? And who or what can help you now? Because we need to always recognize the support around us. The most common responses I get, family, friends, and faith. Those are the things that help all of us. And there may be some other specific strategies. And by the way, I'm hoping there are a lot of dads that are listening, because when dads are involved in kids' lives, the research says simply, they're happier, they're healthier, and they're better achieving in school. So I want to thank all the dads that are here. And when there's a divorce, it is so important that dad stays involved in their children's lives, and that whatever the issues are, that everybody is respectful. And when I go back to Houston, where several of our children live, and there's one of those milestones, somebody having a birthday, or there was a graduation, or there was a marriage, everybody's there. Everybody's nice. My ex-wife and my wife and I all sit together. And we have a very unified front in terms of what we are doing and what we expect for our children, as well as all of those grandchildren. So we need to avoid putting the kids in the middle. And sometimes I've had a 12-year-old kid say something like, I know if I'd done better in 7th grade, I met my dad would not have left us. Well, it doesn't really have anything to do with you being in 7th grade and what you did or didn't do. But when a kid feels rejected by a natural parent, it's not an easy thing to overcome. So keeping parents involved in kids' life is really critically important. And what did I say to the Parkland parents over and over? Stable family, shown unconditional love every day, every way. I believe your kids can overcome almost anything. But I remember one dad saying to me something like this. My daughter knew 3 of the victims. I believe she needs counseling. She told me she will not go. Dad, I don't think that's a choice that your daughter should be allowed to make. How about you phrase it this way? Do you want to see a male counselor? You want to see a female counselor? There's a choice for you. I know you're 15. You want me in the waiting room? You want me in the session? There's another choice. But we can't allow kids that we know are really troubled to opt out of getting needed help. And what else? Let's see, I think I've talked about a number of these things, but part of the message for parents and for school staff is to be patient, provide structure and love. It's almost like kids need us the most when their behavior is actually at its worst. And when we're under stress too, it's pretty easy to lash out and maybe say something that we are not very proud of. And I think all of us as parents, we all make mistakes. And when we do, we need to simply say, I should have handled that a lot better. I'm going to work on handling that better. I'm sorry for my tone of voice or what I said. And of course, at the simplest level, I can tell you that our children have never been called a name a single time. Have they made mistakes? Do all kids make mistakes? Absolutely they do. But their worth as a person should never be in question. I'm disappointed about a choice you made. I'm disappointed in this behavior, but my love for you will never, ever be in question. And I'm also a big believer that kids need to experience consequences. That's how we learn. And most recently, my partner was a principal at a very high achieving school. And it seemed like every time she wanted to provide a discipline that a kid truly deserved, the parent response was often, you're going to be talking to my attorney. When kids make mistakes, they need to experience a detention or a loss of a privilege, something they learn from. And we don't need to bring attorneys in every time a school really needs to provide some kind of a discipline. So I also believe strongly in telling kids the truth about whatever's happened. And we need to be encouraging. Like there's a phrase up there right now. I've seen you get through some really difficult times before. I know you're going to get through this. Let me know how I can help. Is there anything I can do to help? And I'm always here to listen. And I got the example the other day where a kid went to her mom. The kid was a high school junior, and she said, Mom, I'm going to tell you something, but before I do, I don't expect you to solve this. I just expect you to listen to what I'm struggling with. And that goes back to that L about listening and that A about being available. And with our kids, I always tried to say something like this. I have an idea here, but first I want to know, do you want to hear my thought on something that might help at least a little bit? So we're actually getting their permission before we launch into some description about what is going to make things better, at least from my standpoint. And I just wanted you to see this slide quickly to remind you that when we talk right away and we offer some solution, they immediately know that we didn't really grasp what they were going through. And since there's been a tragedy and a number of people have been killed or wounded, it wouldn't be unusual for kids to be asking questions and starting to realize that they are mortal. We all are. And decisions we make about activities, things we do, where we go. And so I'm going to share with you, you know what my greatest worry is about this world we live in with those 20 grandchildren and 4 children? One of them will be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And there's no easy answer, but it's about making changes so people can go to parades and concerts and restaurants and be places and not have to worry about violence. And again, that's to reinforce talking with your children about what would they like to do? What are their ideas about making this world better? And I'd be remiss today not to talk a little bit about what might be a sign of something that is really serious? And generally, the literature says, look for things that have gone on for like 2 or 3 or more weeks in a row. And I had a conversation with a dad not too long ago, and he said, you know, my daughter's withdrawing. I mean, she's moody, she's irritable, but isn't that just being a typical high school senior? Well, Dad, let me ask you a few more questions. Has this gone on for several weeks in a row? Yes. So it's persistent then. Dad, is this really affecting home, school, peers, pretty much everything about her life? Is it pervasive? Yes, it is. Has she dropped out of something that was previously pleasurable? As a matter of fact, yes. She was on the dance team for years. This year as a senior, she said, I don't care about it anymore. Well, Dad, I think it's pretty likely that you have a depressed teenager. Do not hesitate to get her professional help. Let's start with the school counseling office. They're going to know some of the absolute best therapists in the area. So, signs of anxiety, worry, not sleeping well, withdrawing, changes in appetite, energy level, activity level, changes in grades. Those are all signs that something is just not quite right. Sleeping problems, concentration problems, increased irritability, anger, maybe even a little bit of hostility towards the family. Maybe they've been in the nurse's office more than ever before with somatic complaints, headaches, stomach issues, and maybe increased use of drugs and alcohol. There are actually 4 cabinets in your home that I believe you as the adult need to take charge of. We've talked about the internet already and it being a privilege, not a right. Other cabinets, the medicine cabinet, the liquor cabinet, and the gun cabinet. Now that I mentioned guns, and I want to be very clear, I'm not here to question any adult's right to own a gun. I'm simply going to say with that right comes a responsibility to safeguard it from a troubled, angry, impulsive, depressed, substance-abusing person that might reside in our very own home. And in our communities, we need to stop looking the other way to underage drinking. So what did I say to all of our kids? The law is 21. I will never look the other way. I will never provide it, and I will certainly never condone it. And I also said to the first 2, in my humble opinion, all 4 of your grandparents were alcoholics. It appears that alcoholism runs in the Poland family. And you need to know that. And I actually hope you won't drink at all. But if you do, please be responsible. So taking charge of those 4 cabinets can actually prevent so many issues. Okay. So these are the persistent, worrisome signs of depression. And as I said earlier, present for 3 or more weeks in a row. Remember my example of not only is it pervasive, affecting everything, it's persistent, it's gone on for several weeks, and his daughter dropped out of dance, which was previously a source of great joy for his daughter. Don't be afraid to talk to your children about anxiety, depression, and suicide. And in particular, here's what sometimes happens. Kids suicidal, they go to the hospital, they get treatment. That's a great thing. I'm glad they're getting treatment. Now they're out of the hospital. What's like the last thing in the world mom or dad ever want to bring up? They want to go, oh, thank God we never have to worry about suicide again. The wise parent would find the right time to say, have you ever had those thoughts again? It wouldn't be unusual if you had those thoughts. What could you do if you had those thoughts? You know, I'm very thankful we have the new 988 number So that makes it much easier for somebody to get immediate mental health assistance. But it's like, don't be afraid to talk to your kids about this. Virtually every high school student would know somebody who's talked about suicide. Many would know someone who actually attempted. Some kids would probably know somebody that actually died by suicide. And when you actually bring it up, you know what you give a kid a chance to do? To unburden themselves and to learn what to do to help themselves or what to do to help a friend. And sometimes I use the example when I get to talk to kids about suicide prevention. You might need this information next year as a senior to get help for your friend. You might need it when you go to Northwestern for college. You might need it on the job. You might need it when you buy a house and you have an elderly neighbor. Knowing what to look for, knowing what to do is critically important for all of us. And if I was listening tonight, I'd want to know what protects kids. These come from the World Health Organization, and it's basically kids all the way through high school. A number of things we've already talked about. Trusted adults, lack of access to lethal means, mental health treatment available, connections to religion, being in a school that truly promotes wellness and wants to have every student connected to the school. But then problem solving is up there. And I want to give a simple example. I sat down with our son. Jeremy was 8. Son, I need to talk to you a little bit more about the death of your grandfather. He says, I'm sorry I never met the man. You already told me he had a heart attack. There's a little more to the story, Jeremy. Yes, he had a heart attack, but 2 weeks after his heart attack, your grandfather actually shot himself. The word is suicide. Now that you're 8, maybe you can understand that. And I want you to hear that from me, never from someone else. He says, you lied. No, son. Waiting to give you the complete information. Then he looks up and says, oh, Dad, you shouldn't feel guilty. Oh, why is that? Well, your dad wasn't a psychologist like mine. He didn't tell you all the things that I know about how important it is to feel good about yourself. I mean, Dad, every kid has problems. They just have to believe they'll get through it, and they have to know to get adult help. Now, wasn't it sweet that he was trying to alleviate my guilt? What's the most important thing? He's 8 years old. He's a problem solver. He believes he's a good person. He knows what to do. He has confidence, whatever comes along. If I could, I'd give you magic dust to sprinkle over the heads of every kid walking in to these 2 high schools this week. I just wished every single one of them felt loved and knew enough to get adults involved and believe whatever comes along, I am going to be okay. So we talked about that. Now, Carnegie Foundation. They actually started out saying for success, kids in America need 3 or more significant adults in their lives. I wish that was the case for every child, but it's actually aiming pretty high. 1 significant adult. And without a doubt, many of the high school staff members are those significant adults. You know, maybe one of the things I'm proudest to tell you is in 1974, I signed up to be a big brother to Rodney. Rodney was 13. Rodney will be turning 62 years old this coming fall. Rodney and I have had a very rewarding relationship. We're 48 years and counting. Rodney never knew his dad. Rodney's mom was in a wheelchair and on welfare. He never really had anybody. I've been there for 48 years. I haven't talked to him since yesterday morning, okay? So getting involved and staying involved in kids' lives is critically important. And this sense of safety, security, and belonging in the home, school, and community. Now I'm going to talk about organized activities. This is based on over 40 years of working with teenagers. I have a concern in high-performing, affluent schools, and here it is. Some kids have too many activities. The activities cause them stress. I always like to suggest this. How about one activity a season? You pick that activity and we will make it happen. The problem can be the school team conflicts with the club team. The school play conflicts with the community commitment for a play. Don't you want high school kids' lives to revolve around your family? So set some limits. Make one activity happen. And then here's my other main point about teenagers. They need to volunteer at least a few hours a month. What's a kid learn when they volunteer? They learn, guess what? The world does not revolve around you. And when you volunteer and see how much some people in this world are struggling, all of a sudden you're a little upset with your 14-year-old friend. Does not seem so insurmountable. I think really the only way a teenager finds themselves is through service to other people. Now, I'm not suggesting we have to pile on excessive volunteerism on top of everything else, but I'll go back to one activity a season and at least a few hours of volunteer work every month, because I think it is so good for our young people. And pretty well covered those points. And in a minute, I'll see if there's any questions that we might have from the audience present here in the room. But I want to reinforce a few points. Think about that shared time when your kids will truly talk to you. And I know when there's a big family, it can be difficult. And you may not find that shared time for every single kid every single day, but at least a couple of times a week. When are the opportunities when your kid will truly talk to you? And remember, they are looking to you. They're looking to the school staff to see how upset to be. And most kids, they just want to move forward. One of the schools where I did extensive work, the high school came up with the theme, keep on swimming. Every high school kid colored a papier-mâché fish, and they were throughout the school, because the message does have to be, we're going forward. But we need to be sensitive to those that are the most affected. And there are no magic words to say to those that are most affected. It's more like, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen anytime you want to talk about this. That will be the message from staff, and that should be the message from one high school kid to another one. I'm here, I care, let me know if you want to talk about it. We don't want any kid to feel like totally on the spot where they suddenly have to start talking to the whole group about what they might have experienced. And remind yourself every day with every challenge, you are the adults. You've had a lifetime to learn from experiences, so you model all the right things for your children, which is hope, optimism, involvement. And for high school parents, I have a couple of other thoughts. One, it's not enough to know your kids' friends. You need to be the parent that knows your kids' friends' parents. You need to be the one that calls. You need to be the one that checks, the one that actually demands to know what's going on. And, you know, I'm reminded of one party that our youngest wanted to go to. She was just starting a massive high school, about 4,000 kids in the high school, and Dad, I need a ride to a party. And I'm like, Jill, you're going to have to give me some information. Who's having the party? I mean, I need a phone number, Jill. I'm going to be calling up the family. First of all, I'm going to make sure they're home, right? But I'm going to ask a couple of questions. And for the longest time, Jill didn't give me that information. So I went looking for her. Jill, you said you want to go to a party. Where's my information? Oh, Dad, I've changed my mind. No, I don't want to go now. There was something up. And you need to be the ones that figure out what exactly is going on. How many parents are going to be there? Are those the parents that do look the other way to kids and alcohol? So those are the main points. But, you know, your presence, your involvement in your child's life is pretty much everything. And I don't want to minimize that there may be times where they are arguing and claiming none of the other moms or dads require all this. But at some point, I truly believe they're going to thank you, because your involvement is saying, I care about you. I just want to keep you safe. And I need to know what's going on. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. I have a right to this information. And when you're really concerned, call the school. Get the counseling office. Talk to the recovery coordinator, Jen Janopoulos. And they're going to be able to provide help and guide you to the best help in the community. And I truly hope that you all tonight, or whenever you view this video, just let your kids know they're the sons and daughters you always dreamed of, and how much you love them and care about them. And for everybody who's here tonight, for everybody who watches this video, what you've really said and demonstrated is how much you care about your children. It's a challenging world right now. And get support from the school, get support from other parents, and make sure that you continue to be very present in your children's lives. And those are the resources. A number of years ago, I was very active in the National Association of School Psychologists. There's the National Child Center for Children, Trauma, and Stress. And there's the Surgeon General's report. It said, seize the moment. We have to do more to protect the mental health of our youth. So thank you for attending tonight. I know we're not able to take any questions from the audience online, but does anybody here have a question or a comment, something you'd like to say or ask about?
Hello? This is from a parent perspective. And so sitting here listening to you, I feel confident that I'm going to make the right decision as a parent. But I wonder if you have advice for when we leave here and we get kind of caught up in that contact anxiety. You talk to other parents, their kids are doing all these different activities. I think it's really easy to, like, in this moment, feel super centered. And then when you go out into the parent community, to get kind of caught up with that contact anxiety. So any pieces of advice for a vulnerable parent in the audience?
Well, very important to have a self-care plan. Sometimes to just sit back a moment, take a deep breath, focus on what is truly the most important in our families, which is the love that family members have for each other. And I know it's easy to get caught up in what everybody else is doing, but not everybody else is really doing that. So you're going to get from your kids the idea that, oh, no, you're the only mom that is saying this, Jen. But in reality, you might have to work a little bit to find some other moms that also have taken a stance. And then sometimes maybe I am the only mom, but this is the decision I am making because of how much I care about you. And, you know, we cannot be best friends with our teenagers every single moment. And that should never be the goal. You know, I gave one of these presentations for parents, and the principal said, the parents are asking you to come back. And I'm like, well, why would I come back? They heard me, 2 nights ago. And she goes, they want you to tell their children why they're going to change a few things. And I almost sometimes want to have parents stand up and repeat after me. I am the parent here. I am in charge. I control things that my kids want. And they've got to have reasonable behavior to enjoy these things. And when there's a problem, there will be consequences. And my happiness doesn't depend on, do they like me right at this moment? And of course, very important to have either it's the two moms, the two dads, the mom and the dad, whatever the arrangement is, they need to be united on this is what we decided and this is what we're doing and you will learn from this. And we love you, but you made some mistakes. Anything else? Yes.
I know a lot of kids, as we've gone through this tragedy together as a community, I think a lot of kids are depending on their media, whether it's social media or not, I don't know, but a lot of kids are going to their phone to relax, if you will. Are there any suggestions as to find better ways of relaxing and getting them off of their devices in which they have kind of this rekindled love for? Anyway.
Well, you've raised the most challenging question of the night. And I'll give you an example. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at Lake of the Ozarks, and my nephew was there and with his 13-year-old son, and it was supposed to be father-son time, right? There's the possibility of fishing. There's boating. There's wakeboarding. What did his 13-year-old son spend all his time doing? It was all on the phone. Even when we were trying to eat dinner. And, you know, I kept quiet, but it's almost like there should have been some discussion ahead of time. We're going there to have fun. It's a beautiful lake, and here are the expectations. Your phone can come, but it'll only be on for X amount of time. And of course, are they going to say that, yes, there's some apps that are good for calming people down. There's the virtual hope box. There's a mindfulness meditation. But it's almost like, what are they focusing on? And I think primarily they're flipping through YouTube videos and TikTok. And I'll quote a dad for you. By the way, his son died as a result of a TikTok challenge. And he said something like, it's not about their privacy. It's about their life. And so if that helped parents be a little more encouraged. And then I had a counselor say to me, tell the parents it's not enough to sit in the same room when everybody's on their different technology. It's really about knowing passwords, knowing the places they visit. And just, you know, if a kid turns away a computer, if a kid won't let you look at what they have been doing on a phone, I mean, you have your answer. The answer is we're going to have to pull this back. And of course, high school kids are going to be totally upset about that. And hopefully there'll be a way that they could earn that technology back in a short period of time. But if they at least don't take it to bed, and there are some limits. It's like, we're going to balance this in our family. We're going to do a few things together, and nobody has their phones out. And hopefully that will help them learn to do interactions like person to person. And one of my favorite programs, it's called Rethink Works. RethinkWorks.com was developed by a high school student somewhere. And if your kid has Rethink Works on his phone, what's it do? You're about to send something that's hurtful, harmful, really kind of nasty. Rethink Works is able to pinpoint that and send your kid a message. Is this really what you want to say? And over 80% of the time, kids either don't send the message or they reword it. And it's like, when they post something, it's like out there forever. And how do we help them understand that? And just be careful in our language and how we interact with everybody. So thank you for your question. Anything else? Because I imagine all of you want to get home to your children, and I hope you will tell them how much you love them and care about them. No child can ever hear that too much. Thank you.